This is the Evan Ginsburg Show at villageconnectionradio.com, and we are going to have a tribute to the late, great Harley Race with wrestling historian Scott Wilson, who's also a painter. This is mutilation number 2, is it?
That's mutilation number 2.
How do we understand it if we haven't seen mutilation number 1?
I look on my Facebook page and see it.
Okay, so this is the sequel.
That's the sequel.
It's hard to follow, though, without the original.
That's way different than Mutilation 1. Mutilation 1 was a different size and it had sand in it. This was just a reworked painting that I put a lot of blues and stuff on. I'm happy with the final result there, you know.
Yeah, we're miking the artist as he, yeah. This is live radio, folks. So, and we're also going to have Nikita Brezhnikov in just a few minutes, whose book is When It Was Real, meaning it was real to us back in the day. And this is chock full of not only memories, but great clippings, if you like clippings. And we're going to talk to Nikita in a few. But right now we're going to show some Harley Race tributes. There's been many of them over the past week. These were the ones that really grabbed me and touched me. And we're going to talk about Harley Race in just a few minutes, folks. But check it out.
In the red corner from Kansas City, Missouri, heavyweight champion of the world, Harley Race.
Let me tell you something, Gordon. You don't mind going out and having to wrestle somebody. That's what you do for a living, and it's what I do better than anyone on the face of the earth. I happen to be world's heavyweight champion. You don't win this by garbage. You don't win this by standing here running your big mouth. The talk ends and the action begins in that squared circle.
Harley Race was the quintessential NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. 8 times over, he'd like to say. Professional wrestling was his life from the age of 16 until he took his last breath on August 1st, 2019. Harley was both feared and loved the world over. During his in-ring career, he entertained millions while propelling others to superstardom. Most know him for his gruff exterior, but to scores of people within our business, he was boss. When his in-ring career ended, he added trainer to his resume. He was very proud of that title. Harley was truly one of the toughest humans around, and he earned every accolade bestowed upon him. Simply put, handsome Harley Race will always be the greatest wrestler on God's green earth.
It's August 1st, 2019. This is Bill Apter, not feeling too great down here in Apter's Alley. Yeah, stubble and was on vacation, haven't shaven, but that's, forget that. It is mid-afternoon, August 1st, 2019, and it's rare for me to have trouble putting things into words. So I wrote some things down here. And about an hour and a half ago, I got a call from one of my dear friends, Herb Simmons, promoter, St. Louis, Missouri. And I was busy at my other occupation, helping people with disabilities to find jobs. And when I saw Herb's name come up on the phone, I said to my client, just hang on for a sec. Herb Simmons is calling, it's got to be something major. And he asked me if I had heard that Harley Race had died. And I hadn't. It was a shocking lightning bolt that just went absolutely through me. I thought of so many of the times that I spent with Harley, but more than that, what our profession, our business has lost. I mean, perhaps one of the greatest, when you talk about a wrestler, not an entertainer or anything, when you talk about a wrestler, and you ask people way back when, who's a real classic wrestler? Who can you think of being a classic wrestler? One of the first names, if not the first name they would come up with, was Harley Race. And it wasn't just his wrestling. And by the way, that picture next to me right now, the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, was a photo that I shot of him in the PWI portable studio many, many years ago with him holding the belt. And I'm taking a little sideline here for a sec. When Harley raced, all the times he held the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Championship belt, you could see in this cover alone, it's one of my favorite pictures that I ever took, and one of my favorite covers of PWI. Thank you, PWI, for allowing me to use this, by the way, as well. When you saw him hold the belt, you saw a man who was proud. The way he held it, he just exemplified everything that was a champion. So getting back to what I was saying is that when you talk about a real professional wrestler, Harley Race was right up there. He was a man's man. He really was. He might have been, well, he was the total package as well. He might have been precise and soft-spoken on his interviews, but he always made his point. And I remember his interviews, and Harley, the last few times I saw him at conventions, would always ask me to, I'd always do my Harley voice for him, but I remember his promos, and allow me at this time, out of respect, to do this, but he would go against somebody like Ric Flair, a perennial opponent of his, and he'd look in the camera and he'd hold the belt up and he'd say, "You know something, Ric Flair? It takes a lot to be a champion, and I know, Ric Flair, that you've got a lot, but you don't have what Harley Race has, son." He would talk like that. And many times when I was photographing his matches around ringside, God, I started doing that in the early 70s. He would come into the ring and he'd have the belt underneath his robe, and he'd open up that robe and pose there with that belt, looking so very proud that he was a champion's champion. Yeah. And when he was in the ring, the photographers around the ring and I used to always marvel at how great he looked when you saw the pictures that you shot. And he always had this sound. A lot of wrestlers make sounds in the ring, and Harley's sound was always yeah, 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 yeah. And I used to joke with him about it, and he'd smile. But Harley was a genuine champion. I had the pleasure of being with him not just in the United States, but on a tour of Japan in the mid-'80s. And it was Harley who helped orchestrate a lot of the guys who I wanted to, a lot of the Japanese guys who didn't know me, who I wanted to pose, it was Harley that would tell them who I am and why I should pose for them. He put me over all the time. He was just so great. He accepted me as part of the National Wrestling Alliance family back there. And many times I spent days in the St. Louis office and once in a while in the Kansas City office with he and Bob Geigel and Pat O'Connor and Larry Matysek and Sam Muchnick, and they're all gone now. Classic matches, who can forget his feuds, especially Ric Flair, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, the Von Erichs, Ted DiBiase. Harley was a champion who defended his championship all over the world. He wasn't just a United States-based world champion. He was everywhere. He was in France, Germany, Australia, Japan, as I mentioned before. Every corner of the globe, Harley Race was. And when we put Harley Race on the cover of the magazines, people always knew that you were looking at class, absolute class. Let me see if there's... I remember one time my boss Stanley Weston had told me, don't ever get on small planes with the wrestlers. He was nervous that something would happen. And I remember I was supposed to go on a small plane with Harley in Japan from one city to the other. And I don't know why he did this, but he said, you know, when you get in these small planes, sometimes these little wind gusts take you, move it up and down, up and down, and then it's going side and you're going to get sick. So I didn't take the plane. I drove with some of the other guys. When I got to the town, he said, "You coward, it was the best flight we ever had." And then he laughed, and he didn't mean to do that. He told me he was just ribbing me. And I was on many other flights with him during that tour, and subsequently on a lot of other trips. This is one thing that a lot of wrestlers back then did not do, and Harley was always a gentleman with this. If we put him on the cover, or we ran a story on him, if he hadn't seen me at one of the arenas, he always called from his home in Missouri to say thank you. He was always very grateful for all the publicity that we did on him. And wherever you are, Harley, just thank you for doing this. And one of the most fun times I had with him when my book came out as Wrestling Fixed, I didn't know it was broken. I asked him to and his son Leland to cut a promo for the book, and he did it. He was joking around the whole time. He had such a great sense of humor. So it's hard to wrap this up because there's just so much more I could probably talk about. But what I want to say is that I will miss the person. I will miss the man who exuded what every champion in the world should be like. And there'll never be another one. Never be another one like the master of all time, Harley Race. So let me end this with boy, Harley Race, you were just absolutely amazing. And thank you for your contributions to the world of professional wrestling, because the world of professional wrestling would not be what it was back in those golden days without you leading the pack. This is Bill Apter, and if you'd like to leave your memories of Harley Race here on One Wrestling Video on our YouTube channel or wherever you're seeing this, please feel free to do this. Harley race, August 1st, 2019. A horrible day in history.
All right, and we are back with the Evan Ginsburg Show at Village Connection with Scott Wilson in studio, and we're going to bring on board Nikita Brezhnikov as well. And Nikita, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly.
All right, so before we talk about your book, any comments about Harley Race? You're the master of the old school. What's your take on Harley?
Probably the toughest guy ever in the business. I mean, yeah, you can go on and on about greatness, sure, but tough. The guy that could actually live it, and you did not want to cross his path, whether it be in the ring or outside of the ring. As the stories are out there, he was the real deal.
Absolutely. And Scott, your take on Harley Race?
What Nikita said, I agree with that 100%. He has to be the greatest champion of the modern era. If you study his history of matches from the mid-1970s up until the mid-1980s, I have a lot of them on tape. I have a match with him and Baba from 1975 in Japan. There was no title involved. They just went hammer and tong for a half an hour. And there was flying, there was mat wrestling, there was holds, there was rest holds, there was blood, there was everything, and it just went to a 30-minute draw. So these two men actually really put themselves into it. The other match that I would recommend to anybody to watch is on YouTube from June 11th, 1977. Harley defending the NWA belt against Jumbo Tsuruta in Japan. One of the great matches of the modern era. It is on YouTube. They went for a half an hour, 40 minutes, 2 out of 3 falls. Harley conducted a clinic that night on what it was like to be a world champion. And it was an unbelievable wrestling match, which we don't see this or have this in these days or this era, you know.
I was at Madison Square Garden when Harley Race wrestled Bob Backlund, title versus title. I was at the Garden when Harley Race wrestled Dusty Rhodes for the NWA title. I saw Harley against Ric Flair live for the NWA title, and many other occasions, as well as his run as the King in WWE, which I wasn't quite as fond of, but the guy was just tremendous. I would easily say top 10 or 20 of all time.
He's in there, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Your friend Lonnie Poffo had said one time, "How can you argue with success?" Talking about Harley. I mean, the success is profound. I mean, all over the world.
And again, not only was he a great wrestler, he could wrestle circles around you. He could beat your ass if he chose to, right, Nikita?
Yes, and you know, his very first appearance in the Garden, Tony Garea challenged him for the NWA belt.
Yes.
That was on the December 1878 card when Backlund was in a return match with Maivia. So, hey, don't forget, Tony Garea had the first crack at Harley Race.
You also wrestled Steve Travis at the Garden.
Yes, in '79, Travis, and it was kind of like Steve Travis, but hey, he was Rookie of the Year. So, well, they needed that too. I believe that was the Brower card. So it was like, yeah, you know, they needed some help on this one, man.
So, did Nikolai? You were Nikolai Volkov's manager. Nikolai passed a year ago, just a few days ago, and everybody was once again mourning and missing our friend. Did Nikolai wrestle Harley?
Yes, Nikolai wrestled everybody over the years. I'm not being funny or anything, but yes, at some point in time, he wrestled everybody. His career spanned from late '68 all the way till the day he died. He was still active. So yeah, Nikolai encountered people all over, just about every name, you name it, he was with it.
Yeah. And what is your take on Bret Hart saying, quote, Nikolai Volkov was the nicest wrestler I ever met? I thought that was such a beautiful tribute, and I agree with him.
That's absolutely the perfect description. I mean, I talk a lot with people in the Hart family. As you know, Mr. Bob Johnson, a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And they knew Nikolai, his beginnings. They took him in, and always humble. Of course, he was going to be humble as he got his wings under him, but he never lost that. as Scotty knows, as you know, being in Nikolai's inner circle, he never took himself as a celebrity. He was the most important guy in the room, yet he'd be the most quiet. He wouldn't be like, hey, look at me, do you know who I am? He would offer help. He would be more concerned with, is everybody okay, everybody happy? That's the kind of guy he was, and truly a nice guy. I only saw him lose his temper a few times over the years, and it was due to some real idiots, but he never acted out on it. But it was
promoters doing the old, the house was a little light, can we give you a little less? And meanwhile, every seat is full. I've been there, believe me.
That never bothered him.
Really?
No, because a couple of times I brought that at me. I was the one that was said, Nikolai, this was the promise. As the chief used to say, if there was more in the house, would you pay me more? You pay me what you told me. And it's like, that's right. But Nikolai would say, well, guy has a tough time. He has kid in school. We take less. I was like,
wow.
Okay.
That's almost too nice.
Yes. Yeah, because you know what happens then, Evan. It's like, okay, well, that excuse worked this time. Let's hit him with this excuse, you know. But Nikolai, he wanted to preserve the industry. So when somebody would come up with a really asinine idea, it'd be like, no, we're not going to do that bullshit. Not going to happen. We'll do this, but we're not going to do that nonsense. And that was it. Professional, the way it should be done.
So we want to talk about When It Was Real by Nikita Brezhnikov, and loaded with great clips and photos. Tell us about your book.
Well, that intro with Harley Race, you hear Bill Apter and the people throughout the world that have poured their hearts because of the death of Harley Race. Hey, that's because wrestling meant something to us. And that's what made me write a book called When It Was Real. I'm not ashamed to say that I was a severely abused child. My father was an alcoholic. He beat the hell out of me. But the worst part, if you can believe it or not, was the emotional abuse. The names, the way I was treated, not even call me by my name. He had horrendous names that we can't describe here. The thing that saved me was wrestling, following those men and women, emulating them. They were there, so I knew one day I'm going to give back to them some type of tribute. But I always had this stuff in my mind. You two guys, Scotty and you, Evan, you know me. I got so much in my head. Why? Because I lived it. It was important to me. So when I retired from the police department after 27 years with Baltimore City, my wife had me move out to Seattle with her, near Seattle. Her sister was having issues with health. So I had some time. And that's when I said, I'm going to get this thing done. I'm going to put this together. Took me 2 years to get it all together. I made sure reviewing tapes, reviewing magazines, reviewing everything. And then it took 6 years to find somebody that actually believed in it. When I got Scott Teal, he first said, you know what, Nikita, we don't need another This Day in History. And it's like, Scott, it's not that. It's the perspective of what it meant to people. And before I go any further, yes, we knew from day one. My mother stood over my shoulder saying, it's this, it's that. I said, Mom, I'm not going to sit there tonight when you watch Marcus Welby and tell you he's not a doctor all the whole hour. I mean, come on, let me enjoy it. But it was done so that we could believe in it. And that's another thing Nikolai used to say. People want to believe it. Let them believe it. Don't make it ridiculous. Don't make it hard to follow and complicate it, but make it so that they can enjoy it. So the title, to me, it was like, well, to us it was real, so why not call it that? And let me give you this, Evan. The book was released at the Cauliflower Alley Club back May 1st this year. The Rock's mother, I had met her the day before at the elevator, and I knew who she was, so we were talking, and I was telling her stories, just nothing about the book, just stories about her father, Rock's grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia. Almost tears come down her face. It's like, because fan interaction, not what he did in the ring, some encounters I had outside of the ring with him when he was still a fan favorite. And she said, oh, that's so beautiful. I said, yeah, I know it must have hurt him when he had to turn heel. She said, well, yeah, but, that was his job. So the next day she comes to the merchandise table, and I'm in full gimmick with my Russian general outfit, and I'm watching her talk with Scott Thiel, and she's holding my book. So I walk over, and I say, Ata, that's what I was telling you. She said, oh, these stories. She said, the title. That's what made me look at it when it was real, because that's what my father tried to make it. I said, well, of course he and the rest, they absolutely did, because, Scotty, I was one of the son of a guns that would make Greg Valentine's life miserable when he broke the Chiefs' leg. And Arion, Evan, like you said, how it affected everybody in New York City the first night.
Let me just say something for the younger fans who may not be aware. Back in the 70s, I would say the vast amount of the fans sitting there thought it was real, especially the kids. I mean, I wasn't smartened up until people said to me, on April 30, 1977, Billy Graham is going to win the belt from Bruno in Baltimore. And I'm like, what? And it actually happened. And, as a kid, you're sitting there and you really do think it's real. And I think a lot of that blue-collar crowd also did. What do you think, Scott?
Oh, it was magic. The era was magic,
But I don't think all that many were smartened up at that point.
Well, I went to Nassau Coliseum in 1978. We were waiting in the parking lot. A small car pulls up. Who gets out of the car? Dino Bravo, Dominic DeNucci, Baron Cicluna, and Davey O'Hannon. And Bravo and DeNucci just took off real quick. And then we were talking to Davey O'Hannon, who was a heel at the time. And later on in the years, we saw him through the Hall of Fame and talked with him. And I said to him, I have a picture of a match with you from Victor Revere from the Nassau Coliseum. You're bleeding so much. Was that real blood? And he says, what do you think? You think it was ketchup? I said, no. So we couldn't figure out why the guys fighting each other the same night. Well, we're in the same car together.
Yeah.
But they took off when they saw us.
Different world back then, yeah.
See, that's why I also call it true fiction, because there was a match in Baltimore with Bruno against Albano. And, I mean, you could give the rest of the boys the night off. Anybody you fed Lou Albano to the Lions to, Chief, Bruno, Pedro, it's a sellout. Right. So, of course, Bruno murders him. August 16th, 1975. We go, and it's like, that was the match on before intermission. So we go down to the ring, and they turned on the house lights, and it's like, look at this. This is no fake blood. I mean, of course, the ring's covered, the blood's going all the way to the dress. It's like, wow. And, of course, they knew. And now that I'm in the art world and acting, and I know lighting is so important, when they would turn those house lights down and turn on the ring lights, the color was fantastic. And when somebody would bleed, I guess we sound demented or perverted or whatever, but when somebody bled, it was like, man, especially if some SOB got what he deserved. Oh man, we were going out of our minds. We were so happy.
I'll tell you a funny story, Nikita. I'm on a subway with this wrestling fan, and he was talking about an Abdullah the Butcher match that we had just seen, and he goes too loud. He says, did you see all the blood? It was great. And every single person on the subway car looked terrified, like the guy was going to start shooting the place up. I mean, it was crazy. Crazy.
Well, we do sound like we were nutty, but it's like, and you know what? Remember that too. When it was in the 70s, it wasn't what you would call in vogue. A lot of people kept it hidden because I was working for an insurance company. I was a clerk carrying bonds to different places, and I would see some people there who had a little bit of status, but they never spoke of it at work, that they would attend or that they liked it. And it was like, see? Because it looked like, they called it the smoke-filled arenas, which they were, because we had smoking in buildings in those days. But, you know what? The greatest catharsis known to man. And so many circles that I've been in, whether it be talking to the doctor, to a lawyer, in the acting world, whatever, everybody wants to talk about what wrestling meant to them as a child. It touched everybody one way or another. Well, I can't say everybody.
Part of it is the fact that your late, mother, father, grandmother, aunt, uncle took you there. 30, 40, 50 years ago. And they're gone now. And those are among your most heartfelt, warmest childhood memories. I mean, my dad died when I was 20, so from 14 to 20, he would take me to wrestling. And, it just meant a lot to me. And, that's something that really isn't addressed that much. But, grandma or grandpa took you down to the armory and they're gone now. So, my grandfather loved wrestling. My mother loved wrestling. My father came to love wrestling because of me. He didn't like it at first, and then he's like, oh my God, this John Tolis is unbelievable, and the Valiant Brothers and Bruno and Monsoon and Strongbow. These were like larger-than-life characters, and my father came to enjoy it as much as I did. So
it's funny when you hear some of the more current legends discuss that era, and Strongbow comes to mind, and somebody said, well, I don't get it. I'm not knocking him, the person said, but he said, I guess it was a different time because he didn't have to do much, and the place went bananas. And it's like, that's right. You know why? Because he had the psychology. Yeah. He owned us. And that was, to me, I was lucky. I'm one of the luckiest bastards on the face of the earth. I had a bad set of circumstances as a child, but it progressed in a better way throughout my life. Getting to be friends with Chief, getting to be friends with Nikolai and Pete and Johnny, people like that. Of course, you guys as well, but as we share this, but I would tell Chief, I'd say, you spoke to us. I would watch those promos and it's like, I gotta go to the Civic Center. The Chief's wrestling Patera and he needs me to help give him the support, and it's like, you spoke to us. And so when they appeared, no music, it was like, oh, there they are. It was great.
The thing that's not being addressed is the unbelievable charisma that some of these guys had. Today, you'll have a guy that does every move in the book, 37 high spots. He's got a six-pack of abs, but he didn't have 1/10 the charisma of a Billy Graham or an Ivan Koloff or a Chief J. Strongbow. So,
no, and Bill Apter just said it about Harley Race. He would talk softly and direct. He didn't have to scream and holler and perform.
Nick Bockwinkel also.
You got it. The guy was going to tear your head off if he wanted to, so he didn't have to come out and perform. There were those that did, and at the right time. And see, that I think, and I'm not here to knock anything. And in fact, in the back of the book, on the back cover, I say I'm not comparing, I'm not criticizing. It was a different time. But they did have a rhythm to not just the match, but the entire card. It was like, you weren't going to see, like yesterday on Facebook, we talked about Joe Turco, who, we loved him as a prelim guy. At one point, he was great. But, Scott, you love Joe Turco, right?
Sure.
And, he'd come out. He usually would wrestle just about like Johnny Rodz. That'd be a great match, Turco and Rodz, but other smaller names on the card. But he got us ready for the night's entertainment. He didn't come out there and start doing high spots and crazy stuff. He just set the mood. And it was like, see, that's another thing, Evan. And the book portrays when I walk into a building, and the perspective, it's not about me as Nikolai Volkov's manager. It's about me as a fan, as a kid at that time, and how all of these events, what they meant to us as fans. And the clippings, as you brought out at the opening, I didn't know Scott Teal was going to do that. He surprised me. Yeah, and when I opened that, I'm like, wow. Because at one time I told my wife, Victoria, I said, I'd like to do a clipping book one time. But I don't know where to get all that. I have some, but they don't copyright.
I have mountains of them. We should do it together. Scott, speaking of pictures, show us your Harley Race pictures real quick.
Sure.
Jim, the camera picking these up?
This is Harley Race as a young man. His earlier days. Signed by...
I don't see anything, so you guys talk.
He signed this as Jack Long. He wrestled under the name Jack Long for a while. He was teamed with a man named John Long. Can you see it all? See? This is Harley is a very young man at the beginning of his career. I think he signed this as Harley Race. You see the handmade tattoos on his arms that changed later on, so he's got to be very young there. Maybe in his 20s. In his 20s, I would say. That one. This is signed as Jack Long also. That's Hollywood John Long. It's John Long and Jack Long. Holly's father approached him afterwards and said, "I prefer you use your real name, get your real name established." And he never used the name John Long again, or Jack Long again. So these are rare photos. I have him sign it like this as Jack Long. I don't know how many there are out there, but there are a few, I guess. I have these two, you know. This is a color photo of the three champions together with Sam Munchnick, Briscoe, Funk, and then Harley, signed by Harley to my name in gold.
So Sam Munchnick is always spoken of with reverence, great payoff man. What do you think of the fact, I'll throw this out to both you guys, when he was sick recently, online they were selling T-shirts to help with his medical expenses. Do you think guys like Vince McMahon, who's a billionaire, should be helping these guys with bare minimum health insurance, pension, 401ks? I mean, why should a great legend like Harley Race have to sell T-shirts to get through his medical expenses?
Go ahead, Scott. You start.
Well, I really don't know what his financial circumstances were. It appeared in recent years he was confined to a motorized car. Now, that cost money to have that. He couldn't walk. So I'm sure he was on Medicare and maybe had some kind of a supplemental plan. From what I gathered, his wrestling school was doing well. I believe he was living in a nursing home on and off, and God knows what else, but that was the impression you get from the internet. So I really
the internet's not always accurate.
Of course. I'm telling you what I surmised from what I saw. I don't know what his circumstances
But somebody who's generated millions of dollars for promoters.
I agree with you. Yes, of course. I think there should be some kind of thing today. But McMahon has made the statement over a period of time. The reason they send people to rehab on their dime now is so it makes them look good. He said that publicly. The other thing after the Benoit tragedy was there was supposed to be congressional hearings about this and about that, and that all got quashed. So makes you wonder why it never happened. If money is being passed around, they don't have any that independent contractor clause is you know, the people that are in it today do much better than the guys from Harley's era, financially and everything else. The ones that are smart with their money, I guess, and stay off of this and stay off of that.
And what do you think of the fans who do the they all squandered it on wine, women, and song? That's absolute bull.
Well, that's people that's people talking without knowing actual facts.
Some cases, but many of them never got paid what they deserved. Never.
Well, I did read an article not long ago about Haystacks Calhoun, who, when he, at the end of his life, he was in a trailer park. Now, he said, look, I didn't squander my money. And even in the 50s, and I'm not misquoting, he said in the 50s I was making $200,000 a year, so that's tremendous money. But he said, yeah, I was 600 pounds. How much do you think it takes a month, a week for me to be fed, to keep this body? I get on an airplane, I need the whole row. You know, that those days nobody paid their trans, so it was on them. The hotels they had to pay. This is expensive. Plus, you have to pay the taxes and the licensing. So it's like
sending money home to your family.
People like to talk, and they don't even know which end is up. So it's like, don't pay attention to them. But yeah, you know, it's tough. That's why Nikolai, he was out there till the last day. 1 week after, 1 week prior to his death, he was making an appearance, you know, and it's like nobody, even the big Hollywood people that make the billions and all, it's like, you know, the old timers taught me one thing: it's not how much you make, it's how much you save. and nobody's giving it away. So, man, you got to guard that money because it can go up in smoke in just a matter of days.
We know wrestlers who main evented around the world, never broke $100,000, and people idolize Vince McMahon, idolize him, and it just burns me. But
well, a guy like Chief told me, we do the Garden, the Spectrum, Baltimore Civic Center, but during the week they'd hit the small gymnasiums. And there's a place called, believe it or not, in New Jersey, Cowtown, and it's a rural part of Jersey. He said, I'm stepping over cow crap walking to the ring, because we were out on like this farm. But it was making a payday because, you got the big money from the Garden and the other venues.
Well, what's the definition of big money? $1,700 if you're not Bruno back in the 70s?
Well, right, but I mean, these littler shows, you weren't going to see a whole lot. But it was like, hey, everything helps.
But the idea that they got paid vast fortunes and squandered it is certainly not the case in many situations.
No, definitely not. And the other, another key that I came to know the first night that I went to a match in Baltimore, they had this gigantic curtain, and people would tell me, well, keep an eye on the curtain because the wrestlers will peek out. Well, I come to find out years later, why they did that. Because they're gauging the house to see how they're going to get paid. Right. Because amnesia comes in when you sit in that office, and it's like, hey, you owe me so much for this, you owe me so much for that. It's in Superstar's book even, he said when he would go get his paydays at the TV tapings, he'd go into that little office with whoever, I'm not going to mention names, and it was like, hey, don't forget this date. Don't forget these many people were here. Your statistics are a little bit off. So, you had to keep them clear their brain of the amnesia that would set in.
Yeah. He publicly stated that was skimming his money when he was champion. He publicly stated that. That's on a public record. And then he said that, I'll mention the name, Skoland was paying him, and he wanted tickets. He was defending the title. He wanted like a couple tickets for a friend with his wife or something, and he got them. But he said they were extremely stingy with giving anything out, anything like that, even though he was champion. So he's that's in a public. Those statements are in the public forum and on a public record. He said that without hesitation, probably about 10 years ago at least. So he's been very open and critical on their policies, and he was maybe possibly hoping they would help him with his financial needs for his physical ailments and everything else, but he said they have no interest in me, so he's got a GoFundMe that's been pretty successful going on right now. So,
well, his year, and I stated in the book, and my book goes 1970 all the way to the end of 79, but it really kicks into high gear in 1977 because that's when I got deeper involved. But it was my favorite year. Superstar as champion, to me, it was great because then Chief's getting a title match, Putski, Tony Gurria, people that we never saw before, and Bruno chasing the man that stole the belt for him. I think that was hotter than Bruno having it. That was marketing genius there. That was great. And then Dusty Rhodes comes in, Mascaras, Peter Maivia. What a year. And then we got Tanaka and Fuji, George Steele. I loved it, but Superstar, he carried it. I mean, in those days, you could get up close, and it was like, wow. I got to touch his arm one time, and I was like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, tremendous.
This is incredible.
Well, Scott, show us your paintings real quick, and then Nikita's going to tell us how to buy the book.
This is a painting I did called Curtains. I reworked it into another abstract thing. It's got subtle tones. Hopefully it'll sell, make me $1 million. You never know.
There you go. There you go.
There's another rework painting. I called it. I think I called it Ripples. Then I called it Melancholy Perspective. So, any customers out there, you just send me the $1,000,000 and I'll send them through the mail.
That's
free
right.
shipping too.
We have Mutilations. We have Melancholy. The mind of Scott Wilson.
Scott, just don't do with a lot of the great artists. Don't die first, okay? Please, we need you around.
Tell my wife that. I did. I painted Nikolai the year before. I think I painted Nikolai in the summer of 2017. The last time I had seen him was November 2017 at the Conventional LaGuardia Airport near there. I didn't know he was going to be there. He was sitting next to Sergeant Slaughter. Then I had gone to see Larry Henning. I really wanted to meet Larry Henning, and Larry Henning didn't show up. So Nikolai's there, and I walked over with a small beard, not a large beard like this, and he's like, he didn't remember who I was. I said, Nikolai, it's Scott. Then we took a photo. He says, how come you never made that painting of me? So then I said,
see, he always remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I made the painting of him and sent it to him.
Let me do a couple of real quick plugs. August 24th, Alpha Championship Wrestling at Catch in Astoria. August 24th, and you could see Team Splendid and myself. SWF Wrestling in Colts Neck, New Jersey, Battleborn, September 7th. New Evolution Wrestling, Mass Destruction, Saturday, September 28th at the Queensboro Elks Lodge, and you can see Team Splendid and myself there as well. Read my writing, my articles in ProWrestlingStories.com, ProWrestlingPost.com, The Gorilla Position, and shout out to Jim Phillips, and watch Mike Monty's wrestling show Thursdays at 8:05 with a variety of co-hosts who hold me in different levels of disdain. Right, Jim? So, anyway, Nikita, plug your book.
Alrighty, it's available at crowbarpress.com. CROWBARPRESS, all one word. Scott Teal, he's got over 200 books. He's working on more. I mean, everything he has is quality, but that's who publishes my book, so please, I'm just saying this. If you loved wrestling in the 70s, it's a trip down memory lane in the most wonderful way. You will love it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm saying if I didn't write it, I would buy it because it's like, this is cool. I enjoy it. The clippings alone, it's just, again, it was a surprise, but I love it.
You missed the birth of your mother and father. Don't miss wrestling. When it was real by Nikita Brezhnikov. And I stole that line from Ernie Ladd, by the way, Nikita.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
The 350 days in the book is a good compliment.
350 days, yeah. DVD, Blu-ray, video on demand,
I would
worldwide.
recommend both of them together as a Christmas
you.
present for the wrestling fan, a historian. It really is.
350 days, themovie.com. Thank you, Scott.
Both quality works, yeah.
And we're gonna end this segment with our Harley Race tributes, and when we come back, live music all the way from Germany. Karsten Ratke. Don't go anywhere, folks. Some more Harley Race. Thank you, Nikita. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Das Vidania tomorrow.
Okay.
Harley was a man's man. He was a man who loved the business, had ultimate respect for the business, defended the integrity of the kayfabe and the shoot aspect of what we did.
He was a great in-ring performer, and whenever I say great, he was one of the all-time greatest.
Harley Race, the Iron Man, you can't stop him. If anyone ever entered the ring and faced Harley Race and said he wasn't one of the toughest men alive, they'd be lying.
As a hell of a world champion, a gentleman, and a guy who brought a lot of class to the belt and to the business.
Harley will pride himself the rest of his life on being NWA champion, as we all do. How many guys were the NWA champion?
This man was the heavyweight champion of the world. There's no greater title.
I think probably the greatest world champion ever.
Harley, brother, was, I'm telling you, in the top 5 of brother, of all the performers in our business.
It was the Harley Race era. For 10 years, nobody could beat him. He held the belt with dignity and respect, had a knowledge and love for the business I think that was second to none.
What Harley is he's a student of hard knocks. If you're going to tell me to name some phenomenal wrestlers from the era that I was in, Harley Race would definitely be one, and be right up there.
The fans of that era probably shortchange him simply because he was the guy at the time that was the glue that made everybody else look good.
Legendary tough guy, and I don't think, I don't remember anyone
really ever going out there and and challenging him. It had that type of reputation. So, in other words, Harley was the man, and he ran the show.
One of the all-time greats, one of the legitimate tough guys, somebody who kept the business at a high plane and wanted to keep it there, wanted it to be respected, and wanted to be respected himself. He should be totally right there at the top.
To the fans, he was never the flashy guy, the face of wrestling, the stereotypical pro wrestler that you would see on network television or appearing on a game show or doing a guest appearance. He was the guy that night after night came in and had an incredible match, and actually didn't get the credit from the fans in the days before they were smart, because when you had a match with Harley Race, you looked so good, it looked like that you were the greatest wrestler in the world. So the fans were like, why can't they beat that Harley Race?
Harley commanded respect.
Harley Race's legacy, the world's fastest beer drinker, the world's fastest car driver, the world's greatest everything. And I'll tell you what, I think he is.
One of the toughest guys to ever lace up a pair of boots, but also one of the most dependable, one of the most accomplished, and the legacy that he leaves probably is just that Harley Race was a stand-up guy for the talent, for himself, and for the wrestling business in general.
Harley Race was one of the ones that had something special.
So Harley definitely defined the championship in the late 70s and the early 80s.
He just carried a different aura about him, and when he came in that belt and just his simple warm-up jacket, but then he started taking all those amazing bumps, and also when he was on the offense, you believed it. I'm sure the guys he was working with believed it too. He was a level above. You knew you were seeing somebody that you were, it was special that he was on the card. It was special that you were getting a chance to see him in person.
He's Mr. Wrestling. From A to Z, he can coach you, and then he could do it.
His fingerprints are on wrestling today, and the sport wouldn't be what it is today if there hadn't been a Harley Race.
The greatest wrestler on the face of God's green earth.
I'm here. This place is packed with living legends here at the New England Pro Wrestling Fan Fest in Rhode Island on June 21st. And I'm with an unbelievable wrestler, the original and only King, Harley Race. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Now, you brought the King title to the WWF, as I recall. Is that correct?
Yes, at that point in time, I was lucky enough to be in the right position at the right point in time, and I guess after being world champion 8 different times, and then why not have the King too, huh?
Right. Now, how did you feel when they adopted the King as, you know, somebody like for the King of the Ring, and now Jerry Lawler's the King, and how did you feel about that?
Well, all of it was working its way toward the King itself, and by being that King for the WWE, it kind of added to my 8 times as world champion, so it worked out good for me.
Well, that's good. That's all that counts. Now, you were in WCW for how many runs?
God, I don't remember.
Well, I mentioned that because a friend of yours who credits you with teaching her a lot about the business is Medusa. She's right now local doing a monster truck show, and she says you have a lot of stories about the road with her.
Well, a lot of them I can't tell, too, so.
Can you tell one? What can you tell?
Well, just being able to travel the way we traveled back then, and I was very, very selective on the people that I did travel with on the count of the world's title and also the King of the Ring thing. So, but it worked out good.
Right. What do you remember most about Medusa?
Her ability in the ring was every bit as good as any guy that has ever been in there.
And did you teach her any of that stuff?
I didn't personally have her in the ring teaching her, but I did ask her anytime that we were together anywhere, watch what I do and see if you can make any of that fit in yours.
What's your favorite memory of life on the road or life in any of the places where you wrestle?
I don't think I have a particular one that jumps out there and says this is the best. Traveling the way we traveled back then and doing what we did, it's kind of hard to explain all that and make it mean anything to the average person.
Do you have a biography that you've written, or maybe one in the future?
Well, it's in my book that's been out for quite a while. The King of the Ring, Harley Race.
King of the Ring, Harley Race, name of his book, name of the man. I want to thank you for joining us here on Wrestling Talk.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to come.
Thank you. And we'll be right back.
All right, and we're back with the Evan Ginsburg Show, and that was my buddy Leonard Aaron Kaplan, who's interviewed all of the wrestling legends over the years. One of the unsung heroes of professional wrestling, Leonard Aaron Kaplan, and one of my Facebook buddies. Usually I'm fighting tooth and nail on Facebook, but this guy I actually like. So without further ado, we have Carsten Radke all the way from Germany, and virtuoso jazz artist and artist, period. And he's going to perform live for us in studio. I like when Costin comes out of his trance-like state and rejoins us. Oh, really?
You keep saying that, I remember.
No, seriously. It's almost like if I'm meditating or doing Tai Chi and all of a sudden, like, the phone rings and you're back, you're back. No, seriously.
Sometimes when I'm practicing and sometimes when somebody knocks at the door and I'm just practicing really, really concentrated, really focused on what I'm doing, and I don't hear the guy knocking, and all of a sudden somebody stands in the room,
right.
And I'm almost like having a heart attack.
Wow.
Because it brings me like in a completely different state of...
So it is almost like meditation when
I
you...
think making music is kind of a meditation, for sure, yeah.
So Jim,
Yes,
is his vocals coming through okay?
Beautiful.
Okay, good, because the mic's a little far away. Okay.
I can pull it closer.
Nope, that's a great mic.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So, what's been happening since last summer when you were here?
Yeah. Maybe you remember I told you about my research on Indian rhythm.
Okay.
I did that, and that was what I was focusing on all the time. I have my daily ritual, my daily routine. In the morning, I sit in a coffee place and start practicing counting on 2 and 3, which is the basis for everything. And then from there, all the manipulations are developing from. And this is basically what I do the first thing in the morning. And then I read music a lot to make sure I have it in my mind, memorized and internalized. And the things that I did with it was in the fall, my friend Prabir Mitra from Kolkata came over, so we were playing together like an improvised setting, and I remember I was here sitting in the back of my friend's house and composing the whole concert, and I tried to make it as easy as possible and put all the information that the players needed to put on, let's say, 2 or 3 pages, so I could communicate what I wanted within like 2 or 3 sentences, and so they would know what's going on, what the piece would be like. But the rest of it was like complete improvisation. So this is the idea, and that's why I have to do this step back every morning to go to count on 3 to make it really easy, and then, whenever the questions come up, what's happening or what happens when this and that happen, I need to have an answer for it. But I try to really make it so clear, like a mathematical form, like an equation or so.
Interesting.
Everybody can say like E equals MC in the square stuff, but that's very easy to say, but I don't want to see what the term is before.
Right. As an artist, do you still try to explore different genres of music? I mean, would you be comfortable at a death metal concert or?
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I think, I remember there was this one. Who was it? I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. I met this famous jazz musician, and he said to me, "Want to have ears like Scheunentor, like barn doors." Ears wide like barn doors. So I got it, I think, and it means I want to hear everything.
Right.
And at the moment, it's not so much that I listen to music. I'm trying to listen to other things. We have now all these devices and all the possibilities to record and have samples and all this. So I try to take samples from nature, for example. That's what I did last year also. When I came back to Germany, I took samples from the Lake Constance area, where I'm also based, and the waves, those lake waves,
Right.
And it's amazing when you have this surround sound image of what happens. So it goes from left to the right and all this. This was, for example, a basis for a piece that I was improvising along with. So listening for me is not only music, but much more anything that I can hear. I think music is more than just instruments play or computers or singers.
It's in my situation, I grew up in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, which at the time was a black neighborhood. So I grew up on R&B, blues, jazz, funk. And only now, 40, 50 years later, am I checking out some of the rock bands and even the other day I saw the Chemical Brothers, which was electronic music, And I enjoyed it. I saw Lynyrd Skynyrd this summer, which I didn't expect to enjoy, but I did. You know, you see the musicality in different genres that you may not expect once you're there, and you know, you're just caught up in the moment. And I saw Sarah McLachlan the other night, you know, with a full orchestra, beautiful music. I mean, I'd rather see Patti LaBelle or Shaka Khan because there's more showmanship, but you know, it was soothing. It was beautiful. The lyrics were meaningful. So as I get older, I'm exploring in different ways. Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I would sit with headphones on and listen to Art Ensemble of Chicago and Sun Ra and Cecil Taylor, and I had nothing else. I didn't have 20 chores to do. You know, my wife just had a major operation, and yeah, just sit with headphones and listen to music. And it was a beautiful thing, and I'd like to do more of that.
I do that today with ASMR. You know,
you're not mic'd.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's very interesting to just find out what you can hear, and not only music or like rock bands you listened to a long time ago, but anything, but also when something is good, I think it stays. It's just there. The quality you can hear, it doesn't go away. It can be very different from what happens today, but still, you know, you can feel it. And as you were saying, you know, nowadays we also have other options, electronics you were just mentioning. I also try to play around with electronics. Not that I'm an expert in that, not at all, but still I try to open myself and use these things live on stage, processing live on stage, and play with my guitar with it. So it's like a one-man band in a way, and very funny sitting there with a computer. I would like to do that here, but it's like the logistics are getting a little complicated to bring all this stuff over.
Right.
But still, you know, this is what I'm trying to do. Not only because, well, you have to do it because nowadays you have the options, but it's because I think it's interesting, and it opens ideas that I wouldn't have had before.
And would you like to play something else for us?
Let's play something there. I'm trying to make short miniatures, like different from each other. So this was like a.
So I'm going to name this for you, Short and Sweet.
Short.
No, I'm joking.
You know what? We had this exact same title. Was it 2 years ago with Carl Bagger when I recorded in the studio? Short and Sweet.
Well, there you go.
Here we go.
There you go. Okay.
I don't remember the song though. But
Oh,
still,
okay.
let's make it short and sweet. Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. There you go. There you go. So Carsten, any new projects? Anything coming up you want to talk about?
upcoming show. Well, we'll be back here in 2 weeks from now.
25th?
Yeah, on the 25th. I'm looking very much forward to seeing my friend David Shear from Los Angeles.
And tell us about him.
Oh my God. I met him in 2001 at this artist in residency program upstate, Art Omai. And I can just recommend to any artist, just go to artomai.org. It's RATOMI.org. And you'll find some very interesting information on these residency programs that you can just recommend it, because it could be like a life-changing experience for everybody, because people are brought together from all kinds of different backgrounds in music. For example, we invite around 15 people from all over the world, and you make this unique experience of making music together, not with the focus of having a concert, which actually happens, but still you just want to try to find out what you didn't do before. So that's how I met David Shear in 2001, way back. And he was a studio musician in Los Angeles, doing all this work all over these years. It was, say just a name, you can say Frank Zappa or Frank Sinatra. I'm sure he comes up with a story.
Played with everybody.
June 1956, I was playing there, and he wouldn't do this and that.
Wow.
He comes up with all the stories. I can't wait to have you guys together.
Yes, we'll have to do a lengthy interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it interesting when you mix genres that you wouldn't think would necessarily go together, and it works. There's currently a country song with a rapper. 85-year-old Bobby Rush, who's one of my heroes, who's a blues player and R&B player. He did a number with a young rapper. And sometimes things you wouldn't think would work actually work quite well. What's your take on that as a musician?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's always about having the two poles, if you will, and then you try to match them. Probably that's a little bit of a Western thinking, that you have this and that, and then you try to find it. But then it creates tension when you have this and that. What I just did was like two ideas. It's the same thing: long notes, short notes, or harmonic structure and then a melodic structure, and then everything in between. It creates that tension that you can play with. I remember Jean-Louis, this French writer. He wrote the Antigone. At the beginning, there is this one speaker coming up on stage. He says, this is Créon, this is the other guy. He can't deal with this one. Now we have to play. It's a lot of problems to solve.
Right.
So this is basically what it is. So I think it's very interesting to mix up things that you don't think in the beginning would work together. Like in cooking too. It's very interesting to just try to match things that you in the beginning don't think they work.
I have a homework assignment for you. Check out the documentary Take Me to the River, which is about these very, very legendary and not young R&B and blues players meeting up with these rappers.
Okay.
And it's like magic. It's like magic. And I think even if rap isn't, your favorite genre of music, if you watch this film, you would get it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like an 80-year-old guy playing with like a 12-year-old kid, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Take Me to the River.
Well, when you think about it, many composers did that. Stravinsky, Bartók, or all these guys. What would they do? They have their own language developed from the classical side, whatever that is, and then they mix it up with their home language from the country where they're from, combining it with folk songs or the rhythms and something that comes out from that. That's a kind of fusion too. All the fusion you can think of.
What did you think of Charlie Parker with strings? Some people didn't quite like it.
You know what? In general, I like it. I like the idea of having that sound together. Some of the things are a little corny. Okay,
right.
I get that too. But in the end, I really like it because I like the sound of that saxophone with the orchestra. Probably that. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe the thing was also we want to match the New York Philharmonic.
Right.
When I have some classical respect or so. If it was that's not the interesting point about it for me. But I just like the mixture of the sound of orchestra plus saxophone. Or Annette Coleman, for example, did the music for Naked Lunch a long time ago. It's a crazy movie.
Right.
Crazy thing. But he did the music. There's also an orchestra playing with this harmonic universe, whatever, and he's playing the saxophone on top of it. I just like it.
There you go. I saw the other week Layla Hathaway with a string section doing Donny Hathaway. It was just beautiful at Lincoln Center. and I was listening to I was like binge listening to Donny Hathaway afterwards, and his music from 50 years ago sounds new. Like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. It doesn't sound dated whatsoever. Sometimes you listen to something from the 50s or 60s and they have like the angels singing in the background and it sounds kind of corny and dated. But the true greats, it's timeless. Timeless.
Once you hit the spot, you know, you have that connection. You have the link between the two things. It's timeless. That's what I try to create too. And it's very interesting when I go back to recordings that I did like 2 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I can't listen to them. When you go back like 20 years or 30 years, then I think, oh, it wasn't that bad. And because then I can see the quality if there is some. I can see it at all, because when it's very close to me, I always think it's crap.
You know, I tell people all the time, my musician friends will always say, I hit a wrong note or I sang a wrong note. And I tell them, the average listener isn't picking up on that, you know.
But that's not what
I think
it's
you're
about,
too self-critical sometimes.
Probably, yeah. But, you know, it also depends on what I'm doing. When I'm improvising like here, it's a different story. That's going with the flow. I try to keep that nature of the whole situation here, the improvised setting, what I love a lot. So I don't think like this. It's more like the general view on it. But when I have to play classical stuff, Baroque stuff, where every single note had found its pitch, and
right.
You know, everything is like set, and you wanna try to make it happen. You know, not only hitting the right notes, but the whole thing. There is more to it. So I get really critical.
One of the things I like to talk about when I have great artists on is music education. I think it literally saves lives. I think in America, when the first thing they cut, the music programs, the band programs, the art classes, you know, maybe that's as important as algebra in the real world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Oh yeah, well, education is everything, right? I think that's where it starts, where you can find yourself. It's not for the outer world, it's for the inner world, your inner world. And how to find your place in this world, that is very challenging for everybody, and you need a lot of personality and a lot of wisdom, knowledge, and all this that's created very slowly. So that's the most important.
But I also think in some tough neighborhoods in America, instead of the kids being, you know, involved with their friends, peer pressure, doing the wrong thing, you're in the band or you're in the choir or whatever the case may be, and it's channeling your energies into something positive. And whether or not you make a living at it one day isn't necessarily the issue. You know, you have that discipline, that you know, you have a schedule. It's not like 3 o'clock you're running wild. You know,
discipline is very interesting. Did you ever think about the word discipline, where it comes from?
You tell me.
The disciple. The disciple, you're following something or someone.
Interesting.
I think it's very interesting.
I never knew that. Yeah. No, really, I never thought of that.
It's very interesting, but that's what we need to when you want to advance or when you want to develop to someplace.
Would you like to play something else?
Yes.
Okay. go. There you go. So, I like to ask this question. If you had one performer that you would pay to see, still living obviously, who would that be? I love Bobby Rush, 85-year-old Bobby Rush. It's like a happy pill. I walk out, I'm happy for like 3 days. No, seriously. Is there one or two or three particular performers that just do it for you?
I mean, he doesn't have to live anymore.
No, I'm saying if you were buying a ticket tonight while you're in New York, who would you want to see?
That's difficult. I would love to see Charlie Parker. Speaking of it,
that's
the first name that came to me.
He's not gigging anymore.
And he's not gigging anymore, but that's the guy. That's what I would want to see. You know.
My mother lived at Birdland. She saw Charlie Parker many times.
Why are you kidding me?
Oh, seriously. My mother saw everybody, and again, when you're talking about music education, my parents love jazz, so I love jazz. You know, it's. Your parents teach you too. Don't let the computer, the video games, the cell phone be a babysitter.
Do you remember how I got into jazz?
Tell me.
Then I tell you. I think I was born in the Black Forest, in the middle of nowhere, basically. But there is a.
You were raised by wolves. You were born in the forest.
Yeah,
no, I'm joking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but there is not much access to jazz or things like that. But my mom, we had a very small apartment, and she used to have one of these tube radios, the old ones with the magic eye and all this.
Right.
And she would play that radio all day and night, but I think also at night. And what she would play was AFN radio, American Forces Network. And they would play like, you name them.
Elvis.
Yeah. Also, but more like Joe Pass things or big band jazz, all this kind of. That's how I got into the whole thing. Also into English. I remember myself having sung these songs. I didn't know anything about English, but I tried to reproduce the sounds that I heard. That didn't make sense. But nowadays, I recollect the sounds that I have, but not the meaning of the words that were sung.
American Armed Forces Radio. I've heard people say that before. I grew up on a DJ called Frankie Crocker, Hollywood Frankie Crocker, who played everything. Even though it was an R&B station, he would play jazz and he would play pop. He would play anything that was good. And his theme song was Moody's Mood for Love, King Pleasure, James Moody, and he just opened my ears to so many different genres, and radio's important. I mean, people, everything today is the internet, but radio really reaches people.
Absolutely. Also, when you drive a car, what you're doing, you listen to the radio.
Right.
I do. Yeah, and back where at education, when you're just saying that, it opens ears and things. I remember one of my first professors, he never told me you have to play this and that, but I think it was even the first semester, the first piece that I was supposed to work, he said you have to play this. And I was not so much into new music at the time. It was a piece that was like a little crazy for my ears. But then I had to do it, so it's the first time and I did it, and then I realized, whoa, this is much more what I am than I thought the other things would be. So this is also what education means. You're provoked, basically, in the sense of the real sense of the word, like bringing your voice out and trying to find where it is. Sometimes you don't know where it is. At least I don't.
Right.
So I'm trying all these things out that I can. I mean, music-wise, genre-wise, I don't care if it's Baroque music. There's great Baroque music. There's Bach Baroque music. There's
like anything, disco, anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
But you can be inspired by anything.
This is an interesting question. I saw Cecil Taylor and Don Pullen and all these great, free jazz players. Very intense. Don Pullen's fingers would bleed, literally bleed.
Yeah, I remember.
So, who do you listen to relax? That's not necessarily the most relaxing music. Who would you put on when you need to relax? I put on Al Green.
Yeah, me, really, really relax. Morton Feldman.
Okay.
Morton Feldman, this extremely sensitive music dealing with long periods of things happening, and it doesn't become like boring. For some reason, in the beginning, there's the pianist, like, and nothing happens. And then, what's the guy doing? You think about the did I lock my door at home, or is the is the oven shut
Right,
down,
right,
or
right.
something like that. But after a while, you get into this moment because he has really this sensitivity of creating these long phrases that put you into this state of, for me at least, relaxation.
Okay. And what have been some great concert-going experiences for you? When I talk to friends, I'll say some of the best nights of my life was seeing Sun Ra, seeing Kid Creole and the Coconuts, George Clinton, Al Green, Bobby Womack, the Isley Brothers, James Brown. Who was some of the concert experience? What was some of this concert experience that really moved you?
There are many of them, but you were speaking of the Art Ensemble of Chicago. That was one of these experiences too. I was not so much into free jazz at the time, but I heard those guys play, and there was not a single moment that was not exciting or like an experience.
Lester Bowie
with his,
and they were showmen.
With his white coat on, looking like a doctor.
Great black music. They did the gong.
The stage full of all these instruments. Yesterday it was Roscoe Mitchell's birthday, and I saw a picture, him standing not in front, like right in the middle of this huge percussion set, gongs and all this kind of, you wouldn't even see his face because there were so many.
Right.
And that's what the stage would look like too. More organized, obviously, but still, you see all these. It's just fascinating to see that. You never knew what would happen next, but at some points, those gongs will be the part of the deal, or the alarm thing, or so. There's funny.
I saw Lester Bowie's Brass Fantasy with a gospel choir. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Right.
Speaking of mixing genres.
Oh, that was funny. When the first time I was here in New York, we stayed on 15th Street, 6th Avenue. And right around the block, there was this place. It was called Carlos One, a jazz place, like a restaurant jazz place. And I saw, whoa, Lester Bowie is playing with a quintet. I don't know who else was playing, but still. And I said, well, let's go. It was the whole week. So Tuesday night or so, and I said, okay, let's go. We went very early, and nobody was there, but sat down like in the first row right in front of the stage. So because we want to make sure that get a place at all. So that was the situation. I had to go to the bathroom upstairs, and America and all the electricity and light situation for me is difficult. So I couldn't find the switch to turn the light on. So I climbed up the stairs like blindly, and I stumbled across something. And went like, what was that? And then I found the switch. It was Lester Bowie lying there right in front of me, taking a little nap before the gig. And so it was there. And then later on, he came downstairs, and we were sitting right in front of the stage. So he pulled up his microphone and said, "You're sure you want to sit there?" And there were like 5 people in the audience and 5 people on stage, and they would play full force. And it was one of these experiences too.
Oh yeah. And what do you think of the fact that Lester Bowie, who's gone now, who's a giant? I mean, as great a trumpet player as you'll ever see, didn't have commercial appeal for the most part. What is that about?
Probably just people are not courageous enough to explore things. Maybe because I play mostly small concerts, but with not music like I'm playing now, like contemporary music. I mix it with Baroque music, Bach. This is one of my things and when you present like even contemporary composed music, when you present it like nicely and make it interesting for the people, they're on. You don't have to like it, but you're fascinated because of what they see, what they hear. The whole experience is part of their perception, not only the idea of I want to comfort myself with something that I know.
Yeah. So, do you want to play one last piece?
One last piece?
Yeah, sure. Okay, Greg, thank you. There you go, Carsten. And any social media, anything you'd like to plug?
Just go on Facebook and watch my Facebook. Carsten Radtke, Carstenradtke. That's my name. You'll find me when you put in the guitar too.
There you go. And you'll be back on the show in a few weeks in a duo setting, I believe.
Yes, with David. Looking very much forward to that.
To bring anyone else you like. We're very open. Anybody, you and your friends are always welcome. You brought some amazing people on the show prior, and it's always an honor and a pleasure having you on. And maybe Kathleen Huggett will come on as well, because she's a great artist in her own right, painter. And I don't think there's too many shows anywhere that would mix art, wrestling, and jazz.
Exactly.
So
exactly, we're very unique here.
Yeah, when we say it's eclectic, it's literally. So thank you, Carsten. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Wonderful to be back.
Okay, see you soon. Thank you. And we want to thank Scott Wilson, Nikita Brezhnikov, Nikita's new book, When It Was Real. Check out our movie, 350 Days, Superstar Billy Graham, Bret Hart, Greg Valentine, and 3 Dozen Legends. VOD, Blu-ray, Amazon, etc. so on. And Jim, anything you want to plug? Any new shows? Anything?
Nope. Just great summer so far.
Okay.
Now that my surgery's out of the way.
You're feeling better?
Yeah, I feel like I want to go run a marathon soon.
9 surgeries in 2 years.
About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, I don't want
Wow.
to, go with too much exaggeration.
Wow. Not easy.
It's all good.
My wife just had a hip replacement. It's not easy.
She's up and about?
She went from couldn't walk to walker to crutches to one crutch to a cane. So gradually, and she should be fine in a few weeks. But it's not been easy.
No.
So much respect to Jim. 9 surgeries in 3 years. Not easy. So that'll about do it, folks. On that happy note, take care. See you next week.
That all dead, the lines cut off inside my head. I left here like a broken man, with no idea of where I stand. Oh, my mind clear. Oh, I shed my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting here while you moved on. Security, this newfound freedom you kept from me. The sound of all your loaded gun. This outbreak war has just begun. The sound of all your loaded gun. This broken man has already won. Oh, my mind clear. Lord, I shed all my tears. Oh, now baby, I was just waiting here.